Hi, it's Celia again. As I mentioned to you, I'm going to be doing small updates. They're not updates insofar as what's happening right now in my life, but updates to the story. Those of you that have been able to watch the first installment, you know that it was a lengthy hour and 20 minutes or so. I hope that you'll still take the time to watch it, as it contains information not only about my case, but about the more pressing issue of the plight of the 80,000 to 100,000 men, women, and juveniles now locked up in punitive segregation in the United States. And I also emphasize that, and I do believe in Indian sovereignty insofar as the right to control what happens on Indian land. But you do have to understand that BIA jails, Bureau of Indian Affairs jails, are controlled in large part not only by the BIA, which is a facet of the federal government, but have heavy amount of FBI influence. And so I speak with particular passion also about the plight of people who are truly unseen doing time in these kinds of facilities and in Indian country or in Indian jails. But let me go to the heart of what it is that I wanted to say last time and simply couldn't fit in. It's important for those of you, especially those of you who are journalists and activists, who understand an American's right to gain information about his or her own documentation or surveillance or evidence that's been gathered by intelligence agencies. So we have something called the Freedom of Information Act, which has unfortunately lost a lot of its teeth, so to speak, over the last several decades. It used to be a tool that journalists could truly rely on. Rather reliably, we would get responses back within, say, 6 months, even if they were redacted to a smaller or to a greater degree. Unfortunately, these days, FOIAs, as the acronym is known, FOIA, are regularly refused on the grounds of national security, or the documentation is so heavily redacted that you can't get anything really worthwhile out of them. There's also something called the Privacy Act, which enables every single American citizen or person who has residency, permanent residence in the United States, to write intelligence agencies and to inquire as to why they're being treated a certain way or why they're being surveyed, followed, interrogated. And in other words, why is it that you're bothering me? Why is it that you're bothering to follow me? Why is it that you're bothering to detain me? Why is it that you're bothering to interrogate me? And as I explained, all of these things happen to me and more. Some of you may have wondered, well, didn't she go ahead and do this? Of course I did. I did exactly what it is that a person in my situation should have done, which is that I filed privacy acts, not just to the CIA or to the DIA or to the U.S. Army Intelligence Agency, which are the main players in my situation, and the NSA, but to all of the ones that I could possibly figure out to get my hands on information where I could send a Privacy Act request to. I believe that I sent a total of 17 of them, and this is during the time period where I rented out a house for one short summer in Missoula, Montana. So what that requires is, of course, that you give the location of where you are. Now, at that point, I had already begun to figure out that there was no hiding my location. As long as I was logged on and as long as I was using some form of a bank card or using a phone, even as at that point I was buying burners on a pretty regular basis, they were still going to figure out where I was. I still knew that I was taking a risk in putting that address out there, and sure enough, it was probably within the, I would say 3 weeks within the time that I actually then left that house and went into hiding in a rabbi's home in Missoula. And if you're out there, you'll remember me. I won't say your name, but you did an incredible service and you hid me out for several weeks. So about 3 weeks before I do that, my home is broken into. Through the front window, all of my, again, books are tossed and so on and so forth. But what were the replies to those Privacy Act requests? Again, 17 of them. They start coming back very quickly. I remember my postman being amazed that I'm getting mail from the CIA, the DIA, NSA, and so on, asking me what it is exactly that I do for a living, as it clearly isn't like an everyday thing. And here's what I got. Every single one of the agencies, with the exception of the FBI and the ATF, said that they refused to either confirm or deny the fact that they were following me, interrogating, surveying, whatever. There was a long list of things that detaining, things that had been done to me. All of them, with the exception of the FBI and the ATF, refused to either confirm or deny on the basis of national security. Okay, so that's bad enough. I'm basically being told by my own country, we refuse to tell you anything because somehow this represents a threat to national security. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out I'm on some list somewhere. It's either a black ops type list or it's a watch list that's even more formal, where it stands in the pantheon of what U.S. military intelligence is capable of. I have no idea. Was this all a black op? Was it some of it a black op? I have absolutely no idea. And I'm not going to speculate, but you need to know the following. I sent copies of these letters because I always was getting my material stolen from everywhere that I was. Eventually, my material would get stolen. Not all of it, but the most important things. So I sent copies to Aaron Dixon. Aaron Dixon is an old friend, a wonderful human being, a brilliant thinker, author of a remarkable book that everyone should go look up about the Seattle Black Panther Party. So he was co-founder of the Seattle Black Panther Party and remains to this day one of the people who has kept me going and kept me strong in my most difficult of times. He had copies of all of the letters, including the ones from the CIA and the NSA, refusing to give me any information on the basis of national security. And in October 2014, his storage unit in Seattle is broken into. And this is true and verifiable also by the storage unit. And here's what we had done. We had spoken unencrypted by phone and never mentioned the name of the security facility, only that he had copies in storage. Not only did he have the Privacy Act request responses, but he also had copies of my medical tests relating to the amount of heavy metals in my system. As I mentioned in the last video, I presented with really rare heavy metals in my system that were clearly making me incredibly ill and possibly kicked off the variety of autoimmune diseases that I now suffer from. So he has copies of both. He has a storage unit that is full of thousands of different things. And the storage unit itself is secured, and there are many units. His is the only one broken into on, I believe it was October 14th, 2014. If I don't have the day right, I know I have the month right. October 2014. His is the only unit that's broken into, and the only things that are stolen from his storage unit are all of those letters, in addition to all of my medical records relating to heavy metals testing, and a few pictures of him in his early Seattle Black Panther Party days. So he was a captain in the Black Panther Party. He wasn't a small potato. He was in with Huey and all the guys, and women, the amazing human beings that led that movement. So a few rare photos of him were also stolen from the storage unit. The storage unit reported it to him immediately. They had no explanation, no way of explaining how it was that they got in so professionally, and how it was that only his unit was broken into, and how it was that only these things were stolen. And by the way, they weren't out in plain sight either. Somebody took the time to go through everything in there. So this is what I want to leave you with. I've already done the Privacy Act requests. I know what they've told me. That's how I know the FBI wasn't involved, as I wrongly said at first. What I now need is help with my Freedom of Information Act requests. And what I need is for someone who is on U.S. soil, because I no longer have a U.S. passport, and I'm not willing to go to the U.S. consulate here to get another one. So I can't prove my U.S. citizenship. I'm a dual citizen, as I've explained. I have now both EU and U.S. citizenship, but I'm unwilling to step foot on what would essentially be U.S. soil in Helsinki. So I need advocates, journalists, or groups like the EFF to help me, as they've helped so many others, to file the FOIA requests to all of the same agencies that we're talking about on my behalf. And I also need them filed specifically on this issue of the connection between supermaxes and solitary, punitive, segregative confinement and the U.S. military intelligence complex, and how these two have exchanged information. This is what I need help with. It's not a big ask. I'm not asking you for money. I'm asking you for me to be able to basically get my basic rights as a U.S. citizen fulfilled, and that's to know their reasoning for why they came after me. Look forward to the next segment, in which I'm going to talk to you about what happened to me and what I uncovered when I went undercover to the American Correctional Association conference in 2015. It's somewhere where I first discovered the degree to which the war on terror had begun to impact the U.S. the U.S. prison industrial complex. And what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. Thank you, and stay tuned.